Don't know why I still remember that Easter so vividly. It was supposed to be a fun day, just like any other holiday. Egg hunts, pastel colors, and the smell of chocolate filling the air. There's something about that day, something about that town, that has haunted me for years. Even now, as I sit here, I can't help but feel the chill creep up my spine when I think about it. It was a few weeks before Easter, and my family had decided to visit my grandmother's house in the small, forgotten town of Hazelbrook. It was the kind of place most people pass through without even noticing. Small, quiet, and cut off from the world in ways you couldn't quite explain. I remember asking my mom why we always had to go there for Easter. Because it's tradition, she'd say with a smile. But it never really felt like the happy, warm traditions most families had. I was about 14, but it still felt like I was too old for the Easter egg hunts and the childish games. But, as was customary, I went along with it, hoping I could at least find a corner to sit in and avoid the weird, uncomfortable atmosphere that hung around my grandmother's house like a thick fog. There was always something about that place. The old stone walls, the creaky wooden floors, and the faded tapestries that lined the hallways never felt like a home. Just an old, abandoned building that happened to have people living in it. On the morning of Easter Sunday, the air was cold and overcast, which was unusual for this time of year. The town looked empty as we drove in, almost as though everyone was staying indoors. The streets were eerily quiet. I remember asking my dad if there was some sort of festival going on, but he just shrugged it off. When we got to my grandmother's house, the usual crowd was there. My cousins, aunts, uncles, and of course, my grandmother. But this year, there was something different in the air. It wasn't obvious at first. It was just a sense of unease that settled into my chest, a quiet, creeping feeling that I couldn't shake. After breakfast, the adults started talking about the hunt. My grandmother's voice was low, almost reverent as she spoke. "It's time," she said, her gaze turning to the yard outside, where the grass was damp and the sky still hung heavy with clouds. "The Easter hunt is important. It's a tradition after all." I tried to brush it off. The way she said it made me uneasy. It was like she was talking about something far older than a simple egg hunt. Something ancient and buried deep in the history of the town. But I didn't think too much of it. The hunt began around noon. The adults gathered around and started hiding eggs in the yard, although it was nothing like the cheerful, colorful eggs you'd expect. These eggs were all dark, almost black, and there was something unsettling about them. Each one was decorated with intricate, faded designs that seemed to move in the corners of my vision. They weren't just painted on, part of something living. "Go on," my mother said, nudging me out the door. "You're not too old for this." I hesitated for a moment, but the other kids were already running out into the yard, eager to find the eggs. I didn't want to be the odd one out, so I joined them, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. At first, it was just like any other hunt, grabbing eggs, shoving them into baskets, and trying to win the small, hollow competition. Then something strange happened. I found one egg hidden behind the old oak tree, far back in the corner of the yard. It was darker than the others, almost charcoal in color, and it felt wrong in my hands. It was colder than the rest, and when I shook it, there was something inside it that rattled. though it sounded nothing like candy. I was about to open it when I heard a low rustling noise from behind me. I turned around, but the yard was empty. The other kids were still racing around, oblivious. I glanced at the egg once more, my fingers tingling with an odd sense of dread. Something made me hold back. I couldn't explain why, but I just knew I wasn't supposed to open it. That's when I saw it. A figure stood at the edge of the yard, just beyond the trees. It was tall, far too tall for any human, and its form was obscured by the shadows. It wasn't quite a man, but it wasn't anything else I could describe. It wore a strange, tattered cloak that seemed to blend into the darkness, and its face was like a mask, smooth, pale, and featureless, except for two deep, hollow holes where eyes should have been. It didn't move, it just stood there. I froze. My heart skipped a beat, and I almost dropped the egg. It was so still, so silent. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I looked around, but no one else seemed to notice. My cousins kept running, laughing, their faces lit up with excitement. The adults were inside, chatting as though nothing was wrong. I couldn't take my eyes off that figure. It felt like it was watching me, like it was waiting for something. It didn't seem to care about the other children. It only cared about me. I wanted to shout, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I felt paralyzed. The air felt thick, pressing in on me like a heavy weight. I finally blinked, and when I opened my eyes again, the figure was gone. The yard was empty, silent, as though nothing had ever been there. I convinced myself I was imagining things. Maybe it was just the stress of being stuck in that town. Or maybe I'd had too much sugar. But something deep in my gut told me I was wrong. That figure wasn't a trick of the mind. Later that evening, after dinner, the egg I had found started to vibrate. It was subtle at first, just a light hum, but then it grew louder. I could feel it in my bones, in the marrow of my legs. The egg trembled in my hands like it was alive. My mother was in the kitchen, and my cousins were in the living room. I was alone in the hallway with this thing. I couldn't resist anymore. I cracked it open. Inside, there was no candy, no treat, just a small shriveled thing. Something that looked almost like a rotted fetus. It was dark, its skin like leather, and it seemed to twitch as if it was still alive, though I couldn't tell. I dropped it immediately, my breath catching in my throat. It started crawling, though it didn't have legs. It slithered like a worm, with such unnatural speed. Then I heard it, a low, guttural voice coming from the thing, but not from its mouth. It came from somewhere deep inside, something ancient and horrific. "The hunt is not over, child," I screamed, backing away. But my feet felt glued to the floor. My chest tightened with panic, and all I could do was watch as the thing writhed and crawled towards the door. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything went silent again. The air felt heavy with something unseen, something malicious, as though the very house was holding its breath. I bolted upstairs, clutching the egg in my hands, and hid in the room I was staying in. When morning came, everything seemed normal again. The sun had risen, and the house smelled like fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The dread lingered like a shadow I couldn't outrun. My family was going about their business, but I knew something had changed. When I went downstairs, I noticed that there were fewer people around. front door was slightly ajar, and there were deep footprints in the damp earth outside. I stepped into the yard, my stomach sinking. In the distance, beyond the trees, I saw the figure again, watching me from the shadows. I never went back to Hazelbrook after that Easter. I never spoke of it to anyone, not even to my parents. They still ask me why I don't visit my grandmother anymore, but I can't bring myself to tell them. And I never will. I don't know what happened to the others that day, or where they went. But I'm certain of one thing. I wasn't the only one who saw the figure. And I'm certain that whatever it was, it didn't just come for me. It's still out there, watching, waiting. And the hunt isn't over. Edit. So, I've been thinking a lot about it after posting this. And honestly, the more I reflect, the more I wonder if I was the only one who ever noticed the weirdness of that town. Maybe I should have said something, but at the time, I couldn't find the words.